Hey everyone, welcome to episode 2 of Pour It On. And this is a podcast, a time where I get to be with my two friends to talk about male friendship, life's challenges and joys, and making the most of our time here. When the chaos of life makes you want to bottle in, don't let it. Grab your drink of choice, enjoy the moment, and let's pour it on. Today I'm your host, Shaun Emerson. I am a husband, a father, an entrepreneur, a lover of all beings, and looking a little, now that I'm on video, looking a little unkempt, actually, after my time in France. And speaking of that, my drink of choice is a nice rosé, which I'm getting used to not drinking at lunch every day with bread. It's very difficult, let me just say. So as much as I wanted to crack it at noon, I waited till about 3:30. So let me introduce you to my friends before we get into the topic of the day. Ben?
Shaun and Chris, great to be back with you. Shaun, I am a language guy at heart, so I will tell you, you are not unkempt. You look relaxed. That's what
Thank
it
you.
is. Yeah.
Thank you.
It's great to be back. I am Ben Feller. I'm a father and a writer and apparently now a veteran podcast co-host since this is our second episode. And I am increasingly happy to be having this authentic conversation with the two of you and anybody else who's joining this adventure with us. And my drink of choice here is a Pacifico, which is in the downstairs fridge here in the basement. Happened to be handy, and it's going down fine tonight. So cheers to you both. And
Cheers.
I will turn it to you, Chris.
Well, here we go again. Last but not least.
I know. I knew you were going to say that.
I knew you did it on purpose. I knew you caught on bit. Yeah, you caught on bit on purpose. I'm going to say you do look unkempt. No, I'm kidding. You look great. And by the way, I think this is the first time I've maybe ever worn a collared shirt on one of our podcast episodes. Yeah. So it's, I get that it's probably a surprise. Checking in here from Chicago, where appropriately I'm sipping a Half Acre Bodum. It's an IPA from Half Acre, which has been a podcast sponsor for If You've Come This Far. My banjo picker and one of my best friends, Brian Black, founded that place. So recommend Half Acre to folks. And I was going to joke that I'm a professional podcaster, but I can say that because our listeners didn't hear the first 20 minutes where the three of us fumbled around trying to figure out this new platform.
Well, I think there's a difference between veteran and professional. I think Ben said veteran. Fair. Professional would mean we get paid for it, which we never have. So, I mean, at this point, we're still just kind of podcasters, veteran.
It's a very nuanced podcast. Yeah, there's a lot of meaning in the words. Yes.
Yeah. Right.
Ben, would you say that this is a fun podcast, or I mean, I know you're
absolutely. Yeah, I love that we're already making inside references here in our second podcast. Right. For those who missed the first episode, we had a lively conversation about the use of the word "fun" and reserving it for when it really does feel like you're having a fun time. This is absolutely one of those times, Chris.
Indeed. And if you stay with us, throughout the episodes, we'll continue to learn about what Ben's definition of fun is. So it's going to be a continual process.
It'll evolve. Yeah.
Well, and speaking of fun, before we get into the topic of the day, I just want to go through the AL East standings. Currently, the Yankees are in first place, 2 games ahead of the Tampa Bay Rays. Right on their heels are Toronto Blue Jays at 2.5. And the Red Sox, after a sweep of the Yankees recently, are 5 games back. The Orioles are chasing. Ben, any comment about the standings as we sit here on June 19th?
I have a lot of comments. They're all aimed at you, and they're they are the reason why we get that little
Tampa Bay wins.
explicit rating. Again, as a throwback to how I got to know these two guys, I was a fortunate guest on their other podcast, If You Come This Far, when I released my children's book a few years ago, and we got into it pretty quickly about sports. And there was some profane language. And so of all the interviews I did about my children's book about raising a son called Big Problems, Little Problems. It was the only one with the explicit warning for listeners. So,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We're always going to be explicit, by the way.
Hell yeah. So, Shaun, I will say this. The Yankees have been slumping. They won today. I was in Boston over the weekend for work. The Yankees were playing there, and I couldn't figure out a way to go to one of the games because of my work commitments. And thank God they got crushed all 3 games.
Yeah.
So so I thought of you, not warmly, but I thought of you. Yeah.
Well, I'm just going to say, again, for our listeners, this may be something we just reference throughout the remainder of our time together, at least through the baseball season. Just checking in on the AL East and see how it all plays out.
I'm with you.
I mean, it's like one of those things where you've got a couple friends there, and your friends like to wrestle and beat each other up. And for me, this is a complete joy. I love to see you two Northeasterners go at it.
We're happy to do that.
I'm happy to entertain.
See, Chris, more fun for you.
Yeah,
more fun.
Okay. Topic for today. As you know, I returning from a trip in France, and one of the things I actually wrote about in Men Living newsletter yesterday was one of the hikes that I went on was the Nietzsche Path from Ez-sur-Mer. That's the quality of my French. It's so good, isn't it?
Wow.
To the village of Ez. It's a 1.3 mile hike with a 1,300 foot elevation. So it was intense.
Steep, yeah.
And it's called the Nietzsche Path because Nietzsche was supposedly there in the late 1880s, walking it continuously as he was working on his opus, I guess the third piece of his opus, which is called Zarathustra.
Zarathustra.
Thank you. I really didn't care about Nietzsche as I was doing the pack because I was like, this is a hell of a hike. So I was very excited. Halfway up, there is a landmark there. And the landmark referenced a section of the poem. And it was just so awesome. I mean, it said, okay, it started, every poem is a magical incantation that prepares the soul for journeys into the mysterious beyond. What poem is more beautiful than Nietzsche's, what is it, Chris? Zarathustra? If man is a bridge from man, his superhumanity is found in his friendships. O midday of life, solemn time, O garden of summer, restless happiness and standing and watching and waiting. I await friends, ready, night and day. Where are you, friends? Come. It is time. It is time. O midday of life, second youth, O garden of summer, restless happiness in standing and watching and waiting. I await friends, ready night and day. New friends, come. It is time. It is time. Certain of common victory, we celebrate the feast of feasts. Find Zarathustra has come, the guest of guests. Now the world laughs and the terrible veil is torn. Through light and darkness, the wedding has come. Superhumanity is found in friendships. I'm sweating profusely, very intense hike, and I'm seeing this and reading it, and it's carried me, through the rest of the hike. And what it prompted for us, and I'm thinking about you guys in this conversation, which is, as you think about friendship, as we think about friendship, I don't think it's a passive thing. I think in order to cultivate friendships, you have to be intentional about it, and you kind of have to work at it. And maybe at some level, you have to be open to rejection and ones that don't work out, almost like any relationship. And so I want to start there and put that on the table. And let me just say, Ben kind of reached out to us and said, hey, look, I want to develop this relationship, this friendship. And part of that is doing this show. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really special and amazing. And so whoever wants to go, how do you react to, this poem, the idea of, developing friendship?
Shaun, thanks for the story, and I'm glad you felt that way when you were on the hike and took the time to process that and post about it and share it with us here. The reason why I called you guys and said, can we keep talking beyond the interviews that we did for your other podcast, was because I was getting something out of the conversation that I needed more of, and you guys said, well, what do you mean? Like, what's the format? What's the thing? And I allowed myself to say, I don't know. I don't know what the thing is. What I do know is that I need more of it. I know other people need more of it. It is hard to say that out loud. It is the opposite of a passive thing. It was me trying to be assertive. Yeah. Like, can we do something with this? Because the one thing I know will happen is if we talk more, I'll feel better. And what do you guys think? And you, to your credit, both of you said, well, let's turn a podcast and bring others into the conversation. So I think it is one of these seemingly innocuous points, the importance of friendship, how hard it is to maintain friendship, and even harder to build them at this stage of life out of nothing. But we got to do it. We got to talk about it. We got to keep finding it. And the other part to me, Shaun, is that it can't just be me or the two of you. Like, friendships intuitively require reciprocity. People that say, how are you doing? Like, what's going on? Not just when it's convenient, but, and I'm trying to send that signal out to folks, and I'm getting a lot back from it, which is great. But when you don't have it, it's hard. It's lonely.
Yeah.
And there's a fulfillment of male friendship that I think is just not fully appreciated. And I'm glad we're trying to do something about that.
Me too.
Yeah. So I'm the furthest thing from a poet. I don't think I've ever really gotten poetry. I will say I had a professor in college who was quick to reprimand us when we said Nietzsche, and he would say, it's Nietzsche. So I don't know what the truth is. It doesn't matter.
I butchered like 6 words as I read that. So, yeah.
All that said, I read your post and I read the poem that was on the plaque, and I was like, well, that's really beautiful, even though I didn't know exactly what it meant. Part of what I read or inferred maybe was this notion of friendship being that bridge to what we can become. And that's been central to our work with If You've Come This Far, and central to, at least, I won't speak for you guys, but at least for me, why we should be doing this whole thing, right? It's that connection and that friendship. And, I think in terms of return on investment, like I know you do too, Shaun. And I think the investment in friendships is not, is much greater than zero if you're going to do it right. But the return is magical, right? It's everything. And it's that authentic connection that, I'd pay good money for. Yeah, I think I get better. I think I expect me to be a better person as a result of this friendship here.
One of the things that around this that I've kind of been struggling with, and I'm curious how you guys think about it, is, and I'm just going to use the word manage my relationships. Robin Dunbar talks about the fact that we may all have like 150 friends, acquaintances, and you can map it out in kind of concentric circles with your most intimate relationships, and then they grow out from there. And for me, as that network has grown, and I've always been fortunate to have good friends, and it's grown based on the relationships I developed and been living, is I find that I'm not doing a lot of reaching out. It's like I am more responding to people that are reaching to me. And honestly, I feel a little guilty about that. It's like, okay, well, I haven't talked to this person in a month. I haven't checked in on them. And a month goes like that. And so I'm thinking about how do I most effectively engage these people that I care about, and yes, at different levels, but I still care about them. I mean, as I said, I'm a lover of all beings, and so how do I do that in a way that fills me up and lets them know that I care about them. So I'm curious. When you think about managing your relationships, how does that come about for you guys?
Ooh. Let me take the first crack at this, Ben, because the one thing that this made me think about was, I mean, we've already established, and we're not saying anything new to anybody that's listening, is that real friendship requires effort and time and work on some level. And it was probably 15 years ago when Manish and I were having sort of this spark of awareness where it's like, God, we're not able, and this was partly due because we were young parents of young kids, but we're not able to give enough to our existing beloved, dear friendships. And so we sort of half jokingly instituted a no new friends policy. We're like, we can't expand the portfolio.
How the hell did I slip in? What kind of exemption did I get?
Well, the 6-figure check didn't hurt, Ben. You know but you know, I mean, thank goodness, or thank God, depending on who you are and what you believe, but that we scrapped that policy, because not only would I not be here with you, Ben, but I wouldn't have become friends with Shaun, however many years ago it was, and some of my most cherished friendships. So, but it's a real thing, right? Like, we only have 24 hours in a day. God willing, we'll have a bunch of decades left among the three of us, but still, it's a finite amount that you can give and invest in these friendships. Mm-hmm. And so I don't think we were being foolish, but I'm glad we didn't pursue that or maintain that policy.
That's fascinating. Yeah, I think, Shaun, my answer is on the managed part of it, which is really fascinating to me, and not a word I would want any of us to use with this. Is you got to do something that classic case of giving advice that I truly believe in and I'm bad at doing myself, is you got to give yourself some grace, because your closest friends know intuitively, again, that like you care about them. It's great when you check in, but if you don't, it's not because you're not caring or you're self-absorbed. It's life, everything that Chris just talked about, and so. And you need some grace from them too. And just this, I think a real friendship is rooted in not when did I last touch them in some way, but knowing that next warm contact is right around the corner. You just know it. Something's coming. There's a check-in coming. There's an Instagram reel. There's a visit. I thought of this movie, made me think of you. And if they don't, and they feel like I'm not getting enough, we need to manage this, then it's probably not the friendship that is right for you at this time of life, because we all would want to see each other more and do more, but you've got to have that, man, we're just so up against it. Like, anything I get is great. So good to hear from you. Thanks for that. That's what I try to do. And that's what I am hoping that others will do. And so when I think about my friendships now, I've got circles of life. I've got an amazing crew of friends who I grew up with in State College, Pennsylvania, went to school with a lot of them, and we're still in touch. And then I've got some friends from when I worked at the AP and made friends with a bunch of the photographers, and we have this ostensibly fantasy football thing, but we just started this Instagram chat, and it's just silly stuff that happens, right? And I've got friends in DC who I see less and less, but they are kind of the crew. I talk about passive, like it was assumed that we were going to spend every weekend together in my 30s when I was covering the White House. And
of course.
And my best friend lives in Vermont. He's a bluegrass guy like you, Chris, and I haven't seen him at all this year, which is crazy. I've got another great friend who lives in Canada, and he's like, you promised to come up and visit and see our son. And then I finally met their son, and now the son is saying, like, is Ben going to keep his promise? I'm like, oh my God, I've got all these debts I owe. And it's like, what they're really saying is, I miss him. I want to see him. How's he doing?
Right.
It's the same thing.
Right.
So I think as long as we are mindful of it, we got to give ourselves some grace. The last thing I'll say on this is that embedded in your question, Shaun, about rejection is like, we have to do some rejection of chapters that are ending. It's the only way I can think about it. When chapters end because your lives have changed, I think the worst thing you can do is invest time in small talk. It's a corollary of the fun thing. Like, spend time with the people that are fascinating to you and that you give joy to, or work, or develop your personal growth, spend time with your kids. That middle ground of like small talk about just school choice and the weather and where you're going on vacation this summer, it's not real to me anymore. That's the part, Chris, of the time commitment that I say, like, I don't, do you guys get something out of that anymore? Because if it feels like it's going that direction, of course I'm always going to be polite, but it's like, what is this real, or is this just, because I got things to do.
Yeah.
Interestingly, I think that, some of that small talk or conversation about maybe less deep issues like Ohio State beating Notre Dame and Penn State on a continual basis is just, it's nice and it's surfacey, it's true. And then that can lead into deeper stuff, which is where
That's
the
true.
juice is.
It might not be deep,
real
but
friends
it
have a mix
hurts,
of that.
Shaun. Yeah.
That's about you, Ben.
That's your stuff.
Yeah.
So the other thing I want to say just about new friends and existing relationships is we went on this trip to France with people that we met on a different trip. They're strange. I mean, we've probably hung out with them half a dozen times, and they said, "Hey, why don't you come on this trip with us?" And so, that relationship is blossoming, and it's a new relationship. And there's just so many. The thing for me that is hard sometimes. There's so many interesting people with interesting stories and ways to connect that it's like, shit. When you say no, when you have to set up boundaries or have to reject, I have a hard time with that because there's a lot of people I find very interesting, and so again, managing. So you're the wizard,
but maybe you don't have to, Shaun.
No. I think I do though. I don't know, but manage. I'm with you on manage. What's a better word for that?
I think it's, instead of managing your friendships, I think it's be mindful. Be mindful of your relationship. I don't mean it in the, whatever mindfulness, that whole movement. I just mean, be thinking about the people you care about. Let them know, but don't be measuring it in terms of,
right.
If I haven't done this, my only choices are to do something about it tomorrow or feel bad. I think you said feel guilty.
Yes.
Like, that's the box we have to get out of,
Agreed.
Because I don't think that they're worried about it. Maybe they are. Like, I think they know that they're going to reach out to the three of us and we'll be receptive. I don't think they're worried like I owe Shaun and Chris a call. Maybe they are. Yeah. So we just have to be mindful of it. And of course, it requires follow-up and action. We're too busy and there's too little time left to just say the friendship will always be there. You have to do something. But I think we're doing that. I think this podcast is an example of it. And I mean, Chris, what are your thoughts about the management side of it?
Well, I mean, you heard me. I might have even used the term resource allocation, which if I did, I'm embarrassed. But I'll tell you a quick story about something that happened this very morning. And this is in the context of this whole no new friends policy, right? Like, I don't have enough time. I can't invest this much in all these friendships without sacrificing the depth of the friendships I care most about. I went out to meet a friend for coffee. This is a business school friend, and it was sort of work related. So I meet Josh up there, and there's no place to sit, and we want to sit outside, and we're looking around, and we turn the corner, and another friend of ours from business school stands up right in our face. And also his name is Josh. This Josh has lived in Singapore for 7 years, still lives in Singapore, just happened to be in town.
Wow.
And the reason I bring this story up is because Josh, too, I was always friendly with Josh, too, but I don't think in 2 years of business school, he and I ever really had a real conversation. And so I wouldn't have called him a close friend. And so he finishes his meeting about an hour later, and Josh, Juan, and I are sitting over there having our little meeting / conversation. And Josh too had said he's going to come over and say hello to us. And he came over, and I think that the moral of the story here is like, I don't know that I ever showed Josh too enough grace or curiosity, because I sat there in total for 2.5 hours. And for the last hour and a half of that was just me and Josh too connecting on the loss of his father. My dad had died, almost 20 years ago.
Yeah.
The challenge of raising kids, mental health. I work in that field, and his wife is in that field. And I was just like, man, I mean, and maybe he had evolved, and maybe I had evolved, and we were different people. But I was just like, wow, I honestly can't remember the last time I enjoyed 90 minutes of coffee as much as I enjoyed this with this guy who I had dismissed almost, if I'm being honest. And so, I mean, I think there's several morals to that story. One is to show grace, be curious, but the other maybe is that, you can have friendships, real friendships, meaningful friendships, deep friendships that don't require the monthly check-in.
Yeah.
I may not see Josh too for, who knows, a couple more years. He may not move back from Singapore, but I felt really connected with him this morning, and it was beautiful.
That's great.
And I think it's interesting that he pops, the woo-woo side of me says that guy popped up out of nowhere, and you have this meaningful connection, someone you never expected to. And what's that all about?
What's that all about? Yeah.
I mean, it's cool.
It was cool. I felt lucky.
Yeah, I mean, I got to say, just listening to you both now and thinking about the friendships who are, active and present in my life, I feel really lucky. And it's weird to say that, because this conversation of the three of us began with, I want more real connection, and I want to share it. And you guys were like, well, then let's all share it and do a podcast on it. But I also, at the same time, I'm like, if I had more time, oh my gosh, the things I would do to visit more and have people to this great spot I have in Brooklyn, and to go see a game and go to museums and cook out. And like, there's just not the time. It's not an excuse. There's just not. But honestly, I am in touch with a lot of people right now as we're sitting here in 2025. And I feel a lot of joy out of this. I was in Boston for work. We were talking about before we started recording, and I knew that work trip, I knew was not going to have time for me to breathe. It was it just wasn't. And so I gave grace to myself and did not reach out to people I know in Boston, even though there's some people I love there, because I knew that by the time I got to the dinner on the third night, which was my only window, I'd be exhausted. And that's the pattern that's problematic for me. So it's not about tucking it in or managing it or checking the box. It's like, when are you going to have that real moment? So now it's on me to say, like, okay, well, how do I make up for that? I should reach out, and but I did the right thing for me. But I just feel really blessed, and not for nothing, but I met you guys recently, a few years ago,
Right?
And here we are, and so it's absolutely possible. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I don't. We've used the word grace a couple times. I think self-grace is among the most important things, just like self-care is too. Like, I know both of you well enough to know that you're really good friends, not just to me, but to your friends and your family and everything else. I don't think we're doing ourselves a service if we're in any way, I'm not saying you were doing this, Ben, but in any way keeping score, right? Like,
right.
Am I showing up for everybody? You can't show up for everybody. But if someone ever, I know for a fact that if someone who you cared about ever called you and said, I need you right now, you would show up immediately, totally. Right?
100%. Yeah. And I got to tell you guys this quick story. I say quick because I have no idea who's keeping track of the time.
Yeah.
Chris,
nobody is.
Okay. But I just thought of this story I hadn't thought of in so long. This goes back way over 20 years. And I was dating someone long distance who lived in California, and I was living in Florida. And so when I would go out there, you can imagine the time was precious. It went by really quickly, you know. And while we're out there, I think it was her cousin, we're having lunch or something, and the lunch is running long, and I got to catch a flight back to Florida to get back to work the next day. And no one, and I had said I got to leave soon. I was pretty clear, but everybody else was not really paying attention to it. Particularly, I think it was this cousin. And I looked at my phone, or I checked in, and my flight had been delayed. And I said, "Hey, don't worry about it. Like, I'll make my flight. We can stay a little longer." And she's like, "I wasn't worried about it." I'm like, "Oh, okay, because I got to go soon." And she's like, "I go, you weren't worried at all?" She's like, "Just I'm not that hard on myself." And I was like, "Fuck you." Like care a little bit, it's just like, be mindful of the situation. And then after time went on, I thought, I'm just not that hard on myself. Like, I don't really know you. If you miss your flight, like what, I'm like, well, that's kind of selfish. But if you're always hard on yourself about all the things that have to go right, that's going to be your whole life. And I'm sure there's a spectrum between, I don't really care, I'm not that hard on myself, to I'm always failing to give grace. But I think we want to move it more towards like, okay, I'm going to control what I can control, and try to be good to myself and be, good to others. And so I'm trying to be a little bit less hard on myself, because I always think about that. She was kind of looking at me like, I don't care. Why do I care? I don't feel bad. Are you suggesting I should feel bad? I'm like, I thought you'd feel a little bad.
Yeah, I like to be to the airport 2 hours before I do. I'm like a freak.
I am too, Shaun. I am too. Last thought on this real quick. Before we started recording, we were also joking, Ben, about the conversation you had with your dad recently, and how he was trying to understand output metrics and other sort of like whatever it is that an economist thinks about with regard to any. The reason I bring this up is because we had a conversation recently on If You've Come This Far, and what came of that conversation was this sort of mantra that I sort of adopted, which is 7 good minutes. And it was with regard to our kids, like, just give your kids 7 minutes of undivided attention. And the reason I say that now is because we've talked a lot about time and effort or whatever, but time itself is too narrow a metric, right? Like you can give a lot to a friendship in 7 minutes or one phone call or whatever. You don't have to call everybody every week. But when you're with them, I think that's the gold right there. Like, when you're with them, you care about what ails them, right? You care about what's going on with them. And you talked about this on the first episode, where a friend of yours was like, tell me what's really going on. So we're coming back to that same theme.
Yeah. I mean, I struggle with that sometimes, because with family, particularly with friends too, I have thought for too long that the metric, if we're going to use a metric, is the point is we just get together. If we got to have time together and with you, that's the thing. And after a while, I'm like, no, that's only half the thing. The other half is, how does it go when you are together? You can't just say, but you're right, Chris, because sometimes it's tough for me, but it's like, no, it really is. What are you doing to be together in a phone call or a FaceTime or a visit? And some are going to be deep, and some are going to be light, and some are going to be, you're exhausted, but you made it. So at least you are doing it. I would always root for that time to be real, not superficial. But, we show caring in our own ways. And one of them is like, what are you doing to be together? That matters a lot. And I have not lost sight of that. And so the story that we were talking about earlier was talking to my dad on Father's Day about this podcast, and, just different ways of looking at what does it mean? Why are you doing it? But the point is, as I'm taking a walk, I'm like, the great thing about this is that we're having the conversation. We're having the conversation. It didn't dawn on me later. I'm like, I get to do this. He's asking me questions about something that matters to me.
Right.
That's really all that matters. And I'm not always great at that, because sometimes I'll think, I really wanted to go here. I wanted to be asked about this. I wanted to feel this way. Those are all traps, Chris. It's like, you don't control that outcome. So just have the conversation, feel good that you're having it, and let it be. So I'm actively working on that.
Yeah, that makes me think even more. Like what I need from a conversation or time isn't necessarily what my friend needs from that time, right?
Yeah.
And so don't assume, because sometimes the friend does just want to talk about Holy Cross football.
You guys bring up sports a lot. I mean, I'm trying to bring in I'm trying to bring in all kinds of listeners.
Are you kidding
me? Jesus, holier than thou bullshit.
Thought that would get you.
Any other last comments? I have to say, while you guys are talking, I'm looking at the graphic that Chat created, our little animated graphic here. It makes me look like I'm 80, doesn't it? You guys look like you're in your 40s. I'm looking like I'm 80.
I was gonna complain about that. I have a little beer belly there, which is less than the beer belly I have in real life.
I thought you were being kind, Shaun. You're the one that ran it through AI, and you hid mine. You put me behind you.
So
you can't see the weight I put on.
But you are in the center, though, Ben. You are in the center.
I am in the center. Yeah, I don't know, Shaun. We started with your reflection on your appearance. We're ending with your reflection on your appearance. Maybe we should have a podcast on that. Are you doing okay, my friend? I'm just checking in. I don't think you look.
We'll just do a whole show. You guys can critique how I'm looking.
I think you look great in the graphic. I don't think you look good. I don't. Genuinely don't.
Well, real quick, in episode 1, several movies got brought up, and I have to bring one up again. It doesn't have to happen every episode, but this for me brings. You guys remember, obviously, Stripes, where he talks about Sergeant Halka as the big toe. I think Ben Feller is the big toe of this outfit.
That's amazing. I love how you set that up where you said, obviously, Stripes. Like, of course. I'm sure there's some people who are like, Stripes, And I feel I'm not going to give myself grace on this because I have not yet watched Stripes with my son. I'm adding that to the list. Sure, maybe there's that mud wrestling scene. There might be some fast forwarding, but what a great movie. That's movie. An amazing compliment, Chris, the big toe. Yeah,
I think that's why Shaun put you in the middle. Yeah.
So we're just going to refer to him as the big toe from now on.
It doesn't have to stick. It could be. It could be episodic. It might.
But is he going to hear it from some of his friends? Oh yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
The toe. All right. Another wonderful conversation. Thank you, everyone, for joining us and for today's episode and this adventure that we're on together. This is only episode 2. More good stuff to come. If you enjoyed it, I hope you did. Tell your friends about it. You can find this on Apple and Spotify, and now we created a YouTube channel, which will be really exciting. If you want to learn more about us, you can find us on LinkedIn. And until next time, remember, you don't have to bottle it in. Let's pour it on together.
Take care, my friends.
Love you, boys.